To part 2 of annotating a poem. What I've done now is I went and I took one word that I looked up, pyre, and I did a quick free write on this. So what I wrote was pyre is both a funeral ritual and the act of burning something. It makes me think of some of the funereal traditions of Vikings, that they were sent out to sea in a burning boat. He is his own pyre. We make our own heat, our own anger. War. Yes, war is made from within, from people. I also think that this phrase alludes to the famous photographs of Vietnamese civilians, children, women, innocents, running from villages being burned by napalm, with their skin burning and on fire. Napalm, this idea of gelling something to make it flammable, then applying that to blood, the blood gelled. I think of blood pudding, which is an Irish specialty, or the thick coat of fat that rises to the top of the pot when I make broth from bones. Raging refers to anger and to uncontrollable spread. Incendiaries are things that create fire. There is a clear reference in this poem to a fire within that is also an uncontrollable anger. Living in a country that has been completely burned by an incendiary that went out of control. But that last sentence, I won't only bloom where I'm planted. It is hopeful, perhaps, but it also shows the power of destruction, of anger to spread. I also just remembered the Buddhist monks setting themselves on fire to protest the war. Where are we now? Excuse me. As a human civilization. Look at all the wars still happening. All these fires blooming everywhere. What will the result of this be? Gasoline is an incendiary, but also an economic tool. Gas prices rise and everyone is affected. Gasoline is also related to climate change. And then I went through and I started making notes on the side. So, I looked at a map pinned with targets. And then what I wrote here was another free write, but shorter than the one I just did about pyre. I wrote, this is a reference to war planning. Targets are identified, bombs are dropped. This doesn't specify where the map is, though. It could be anywhere. And it doesn't say it is a country or a place. It is a piece of paper removed from reality. It is only representative. Another thought, maps are made by colonial powers to demonstrate jurisdiction. For example, the division between India and Pakistan, or between Mexico and the United States, or the United States and Canada. These borders are not part of the natural world. They were made by colonial powers, usually after wars, to designate their domain and the limits of their power. So, and when I start writing my rough draft next week, I know that my interpretation of this poem is something about war spreading, a contrast between the natural world and the created world. And there's also going to be something in there about colonial powers, about how colonial powers try to control things, perhaps with maps, but then things get out of control. I also really found this interesting when I started looking at the poem closely. Like all effective incendiaries, I won't only bloom where I'm planted. That word effective really stuck out to me. And I thought, does this mean the actual intent of a fire producing material is to spread? I think this is important. It's the last sentence in the poem, but I don't know what this means. There's an allusion to fertilization and the natural world that contrasts up here with this map and the scientist in a lab. Do our weapons of war necessarily go out of control? Do our weapons of war always have unintended and unknown effects? This is also a very short poem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It has 8 lines. It does not rhyme. It has 1 stanza. And most of the lines are what's called enjambed. I'm going to write that here. Enjambed. which means that the sentence doesn't end when the line breaks. The sentence ends at the next line. So it has the effect of kind of breaking up the content of the poem. So the poem itself is jagged. This is what I want you to do this week. I want you to take the poem that you chose from our selections, and I want you to annotate it and do some free writing on it, and then come into class next Thursday with the form that I'm going to post. You could also, if you don't have it, if you just have it printed out, you can take a picture and upload that.